I have one prerequisite for people that come to work for us. You want to be there, and it's just not a job, right? You want to be there to make a difference.
Hi, and welcome to the Innovative Mindset Podcast. I'm your host, Isolde Trachtenberg. On the show, you get my conversations with peak-performing thought leaders, creatives, and entrepreneurs. We explore how you can innovate through creativity, compassion, and collaboration. I believe that innovation combined with compassion and creative thinking can save the world, and I aim to bring you ways you can do it too. If you're enjoying the show, I'd be super grateful if you can support it by buying me a cup of coffee. You can buy me a cuppa at buymeacoffee.com/Isolde T. And now, let's get on with the show. Hey there, and welcome to the Innovative Mindset Podcast. My name is Isolde Trachtenberg. I'm super happy that you're here, and I'm so honored and happy to have this week's guest on the show. Check this out. Norm Snyder joined Reed's Incorporated in September of 2019 as the Chief Operating Officer. He was appointed Chief Executive Officer in March 2020. Prior to joining Reed's, Norm, I love that. Norm served as President and Chief Executive Officer of Avite USA, LLC, an emerging premium new age beverage company that markets and sells a line of ready-to-drink caffeinated waters. Prior to Avite, he served as the President and Chief Operating Officer for Adina for Life. He was President and Chief Executive Officer of High Falls Brewing Company and Chief Financial Officer and later Chief Operating Officer of South Beach Beverage Company, known as SoBe. In prior experience, Mr. Snyder, Norm, served as the controller for the National Football League properties. That tells us something about Norm, and in various roles at Price Waterhouse during an 8-year tenure. Norm earned a BS in accounting from the State University of New York at Albany. Wow, you have quite the resume, Norm. Thank you so much for being on the show. Welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here.
I am, first of all, you have such a wide range of experience, and you began as an accountant, which I think is it's so fascinating because accounting is in many ways everything. Knowing where you are, knowing where you want to go, and knowing the sort of the numbers behind it is incredibly fascinating to me. And I'm wondering, how did you get from I started in accounting to I am the CEO of one of my favorite beverage companies, Reed's, because I love the ginger beer and ginger ale. How did that happen?
Well, it kind of goes back to before I went to school and figured out what I wanted to do. And I always had a penchant for business, but I also thought I wanted to be a lawyer. And somehow I threw that into a cup and shook it up and threw it out, and accounting came out. And I thought, the real basic premise behind it is exactly you touched on. If I understand the numbers guide every business, if I understand where all the numbers are coming from, it would be a great way to learn. It would be a start. So, I spent the formidable part of my career really working with big Fortune 500 corporations and really got to see a lot how they operated and really use the numbers, how to dig in and understand that. And then when I got on the business side, I loved it even more. So I knew that, business is where I really wanted to be, and, in an operating role. And as I progressed, I loved it more and more. And then I found at the end of the day, it really gave me a competitive advantage being a CEO that understood numbers and how things worked. So I always felt like when it came down to financial negotiations, nobody could top me. So it was kind of a stepping stone or a ladder is how to start and where I wanted to go. And then once I got into that side of the business, I fell in love with it. And I just, I knew that's where I wanted to be. And that's where I am now.
Oh, that's fascinating to me. This notion of having a springboard, and then you innovated from there and you developed this incredible career from something that is as basic as numbers, but they can be really complicated. And it's interesting to me because Reed's is, I'm going to be very honest. I've been drinking Reed's since the 90s when I first heard about it and started. It was only available like in the natural health food stores type places. It wasn't
Yes.
widely available. And yet you've been innovating and making it so much more prevalent everywhere. I would love it for those of you listening who have not heard about Reeds. You need to go out and get it's so good, if you, especially if you like ginger. But Norm, I would love it if you would talk a little bit about Reeds, where it was when you started and where it is today. And if you could tell just a little bit about what the company is, I would love that.
Well, let me say a couple things before I answer that question. Number one, I started drinking it in the 90s too. So,
Yay.
I was a consumer long before I became involved with the company.
Hmm.
The other thing too is, throughout your career, and I'll say this to any young people that are looking for advice. I've also had great mentors. And one of the reasons why I'm here, ironically, is a guy that I started working for over 30 years ago in NFL Properties named John Bello. And if you look at spots on my resume, there's a lot of spots that he was involved with.
Hmm.
And he has been very instrumental in my career in terms of learning and patterning things off him.
Hmm.
So that's important too. Now, Reed's is a great company. And one of the things that I love about it, and this is what makes me feel good when I wake up every morning and I talk about it. We just came out with this campaign called, Reed's is real, or Reed's, I got to make sure I get this right. Real is always better. That's it.
Hmm.
And if you take a look at our ingredients panel, and if you know how we make our products, they are so far superior than any of our competitors by far.
Hmm.
And that makes me feel really good because we're offering consumers, the best ginger beer, the best ginger ale, the best craft sodas that we have. And, it's a 30-year-old company started by a gentleman in Southern California named Chris Reed, who had this idea. He loved ginger, and that the world really knew nothing about ginger except for maybe, on a Chinese food menu,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And all the great properties that ginger has, and created this all natural, better for you drink, and which started because if you go back on 30 years ago, the only channel that would carry such a thing were natural stores, right?
Hmm.
And then it morphed into grocery stores because as natural stores became bigger and started stealing business from grocery stores said, wow, we've got to start offering more natural products, right?
Hmm.
And,
Hmm.
most mainstream grocery stores today have a fairly large section of natural products or have natural products interspersed within the regular categories.
Hmm.
So we kind of morphed off into that. And, we've been growing ever since because obviously, as people become more educated and understand the great properties that a lot of these products have and become more knowledgeable and want better for you products, it's the classic supply meets demand scenario. And we've been able to fill that gap.
I'm taking all of that in for a second because it's in many ways looking at it from an economics standpoint. That whole idea of supply and demand it's as old as time, and
Yes.
yet there are some innovations here that are fascinating to me, because the innovation when Mr. Reed started the company was all natural ingredients, especially focusing on actual ginger instead of
Yes.
sort of ode to ginger, if you will. And that was different. That was really different. I remember thinking that when I first started drinking it, and that it tasted like ginger, not like
Yes. Yep.
faux ginger, if you will. And so how does that work when you're starting something like this? And I know you haven't been with the company all that long, but you're still innovating. You're coming out with new campaigns. How does somebody decide, you know what, I'm going to do things in a way that people aren't thinking about, like all natural ingredients, actual fresh ginger in the sodas instead of fake ginger or whatever. What do you think the mindset has to be of someone who takes that kind of chance?
I think they truly believe in and stay true to their convictions of this is what they want and this is good, and I'm just going to persevere and educate as many people as possible, and hopefully they'll see it the way I do. I mean, obviously, anybody that takes that type of risk, right, and anybody that creates something that sticks for 30 years, has done something pretty tremendous in my view.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things we haven't deviated from is that founding guiding principle that Chris started, and that's why it came back to this whole thing that real is always better. That 30 years we're still doing it the way he did it in his garage or his
Mm-hmm.
kitchen, right?
Mhm.
We're still using organic real ginger that we import from Peru, and we still make it the same way, and we still make it what he refers to as the Jamaican inspired recipe, which is fruit juices. So we use pineapple, lemon, lime, and honey, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what I've tried to do is just improve the efficiencies of how we put all that together, right?
Mm-hmm.
And not deviate. But as you mentioned, innovate. So that's a great next step in how we innovate, is because if you look at the ginger beer category relative to other beverage categories, it's kind of small, and a lot of competitors saw the success that Reed's has and have come in, and obviously that takes market share. And if you look at ginger beer consumers, it's kind of a mix, and it's used as a mixer, obviously, with the popularity of like Moscow Mules and Dark and Stormies, and that's quite frankly how I met Reed's, over a few Moscow Mules.
In those special copper cups.
Yeah, but those copper mugs, right? And then, but you have some folks that like drink it. Like I used the Jamaican inspired recipe. We had a Jamaican woman that worked for us, and everybody makes their own home version, but they drink it like a soda. So it's a mix that people that drink it like a soda, they use it as a mixer. Actually, there's people that drink it because of that helps their digestion. It helps them if they have nausea. We have a lot of like cancer patients, believe it or not, that reach out to us because it helps them. So, but that's sort of very limited type of audience. So, one of the things that we thought of, which was kind of a natural, is the ginger ale category, which people drink ginger ale the same way. I mean, my grandmother gave it to me when I had an upset stomach. My mother gave it to me. If you go in the hospital, they give it to you, right? But it's a much broader category. It's not as, you don't have quite the ginger burn that you do in ginger beer. But we said, geez, why aren't we in the ginger ale category? I mean, and as we peeled back the onion a little bit, we found once again that nobody's really using fresh ginger or real ginger. They're using ginger flavoring, ginger extracts. So we took that formula and applied it to our ginger ale.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's probably our fastest growing product right now. And you mentioned that you would be drinking your 0-calorie ginger beer. I've been drinking like the 0-calorie ginger ales, like they're going out of style, right?
Mm-hmm.
I just love the flavor. It's a great product. We took the foundation of our ginger beer and created this. So that's, a great way we've innovated. Then we took it a step further, and we came up with mocktails because we found out that a lot of folks said, hey, I want to go out, but I don't want to feel like I have to have an alcoholic drink in my hand. So, and I think in your neck of the woods in Brooklyn, there's been non-alcoholic bars that have popped up, right? For people to go out that want to have fun and socialize, but don't want to feel like they have to drink. So we came up with these ginger ale based mocktails, Shirley Temple, and our version's called Shirley Tempting. and then Transfusion, which has been a very popular drink. So obviously, if you want to mix it with alcohol, you can, but if you don't, you have a really great, healthy, 0-calorie beverage that you can enjoy and not feel like you have to consume it with alcohol. So I think that's a great sort of 3-step how we've really pivoted and innovative to give folks a great quality product. It's all natural, but that they can drink at the occasion that they feel the most appropriate. And the reaction's been really, really positive.
And I'm so glad that you said that, because I am not a huge drinker, and I'm usually the designated driver, so it's really nice to be able to go, I would like something that is going to taste great. This is going to sound a little weird, but it's going to look good, if you see what I
Yes.
mean.
Yes.
Because
Because you don't want to feel out of place, right? You
yeah,
want to feel like you fit in with everybody. And then that's the beauty of these things. And, one of the things that I do and I love, part of my job is, we have 6 production facilities across the country. Every production run that they do, they ship product to me. So my office looks like a collection of bottles, right? And I have a mini refrigerator, and I try them both warm, ambient temperature, and cold. But I drink multiple products every day from different locations where they're produced, to look A, for quality,
Mm-hmm.
B, for consistency. But I mean, I want to drink this stuff because I want to know if a consumer says something that I can say, look, I had that. This is what I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Or do I detect there's an issue? Because if there's an issue, we need to fix it. So I do that every day. I mean, I drink multiple products every day, 7, all the time in the office, but I have a collection of all of our production stuff. So I know what's going on, and I know what our consumers are picking up.
I love that. It's funny going into a bar or a pub and ordering something non-alcoholic feels sometimes. I've had people say, "Oh, you must be in AA." And I'm like, "No,
No.
I just didn't want to drink." And so this it's a weird way, it's a weird way of passing, actually, because fewer people will talk to you about that sort of thing. Not that it's any of their business, but yet something that is interesting to me about what you just said about making sure that the consumer experience is a positive one. That's one of the results, right? Is that people
Yes.
feel more comfortable drinking it. And something else that I would love to ask you about, you said that you check in as far as whether or not things are going well from all the production facilities. And I like to say that an innovator is a creative thinker on a mission. And it sounds to me like you're embodying that. This notion of checking in, of being very practical. Can you talk a little bit about what those steps are? How do you keep innovating while staying very practical in the evaluation and assessment process?
Well, because the innovation is the fun part, right?
For sure.
It really is. I mean, you can come up with the wackiest ideas, and it's like a release, right? It's like you can get all this stuff off your chest, off your mind. I mean, I'm like, it's kind of funny. It's ruined me forever being in the beverage business, because I can't go into a store and just buy stuff,
Hmm.
right? I've got to go to the beverage section. I got to go to the coolers. I got to check out what's going on. I look at, there's all this scan data. So it's syndicated data that either Nielsen or IRI puts out, that shows by category what's selling, what's not selling, by package. I mean, I love data too. So it's kind of like, so you assimilate all this stuff that you're seeing,
Hmm.
that you hear people talking about. I have 3 20-year-old children. Well, actually I have 5, but 3 that are in their 20s. And I watch what they drink and what their friends drink and what they talk about. Like I said, when I go into stores, I no matter what I'm doing, if I'm going on mission A, I always end up in the beverage aisle to check out what's going on. So it's the fun part, is the innovation thinking. This is what I think people want. We do a lot of research. This, based on what the research tells us people want. So we'll put together a product concept. This is when it becomes a little bit more formal, but a product concept, and then work with our R&D department to create something. And then the fun part is that first time that you taste it, and does that product really reflect what you're trying to do, right? And sometimes you get there very quickly. And sometimes it takes a dozen iterations, and sometimes you just say, can't get there.
Mm.
Can't get there. No one's gonna drink this. So that's kind of the fun part, because it's part science, part art, part intuitive, and and I do it with a lot of people within our organization, right? So it's just not me, it's everybody, and it's kind of like free flow. I got to make sure I say that slowly. Free flow thinking,
Hmm.
where people can just kind of like say what's on their mind, right? And you watch trends, and you have data, and you do other stuff, and you try to put it all together, and come up with a decision that makes sense. But we do that on the premise of who we are and what
Hmm.
are our key values, right? It has to be within those, because what if we deviate from what our values are, then who are we really, right? So we try to stay within that sort of bandwidth of who we are and what we want to be. And like I said, sometimes it just feels really good. It's like, boy, we nailed this. And sometimes it's like, well, it could be a stretch, but does it work? And sometimes we come back and just say, that's not us. So it's the fun part of the job, and it's the part that's unstructured and very loose and very flowing, and it's fun. And I'm really proud that as an organization we have no shortage of really good ideas, and like we've got the next 2 to 3 years covered, right? Not
Mm,
saying that if something new comes up that we couldn't react quickly, but we have that many ideas that are good.
that's fantastic. And I'm struck by the notion of including everybody, that it's not just you making the decisions, it's you working with your team, with the people who make up the company. And I'm wondering that that's in many ways an innovative thing also. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about how you structure that. If there is you said it's free flowing, but there has to be some sort of a almost a process when you're doing something iteratively like that.
Well,
How do you
once
do that?
yeah, we've developed, not that we want to be burdened with structure, but at the same time, you just can't be shooting from the hip. So we develop and continue to develop processes once we get to that formal stage of, yeah, let's do this. But so my job is, which is hire as many good people as possible, right? And let them do the work and let
Right.
me take the credit, right? Well, my job is to really I'm almost like the conductor in the orchestra,
Hmm.
and there's different sections and there's people with different strengths and different weaknesses. And after you work with folks, you get to know what their strengths are. So when something comes up, like this person or that person or this group of people are the ones that I'm going to listen to a little bit more,
Hmm.
not shut other people out, because there's been good ideas that come from from people you don't expect. But and it's sort of it's and I'll tell you, it's kind of spontaneous, because some days I'll start on one project and then I'll either be bogged down or something else will come up, and then I need a break, and I'll just say, all right, let's taste, right? Let's taste. We've got a bunch of stuff that we've been working on. Let's taste it.
Hmm.
And we'll sit there, and you got to be careful, because you can't, once you taste too much, your taste buds become severely ineffective,
Hmm.
as well as your ability to smell. So you really got to kind of measure yourself, but it could be spontaneous, like, let's do it, or let's talk about this, or then we schedule, we have weekly meetings that deal with all these things, and a lot of it starts, but then we may say, let's just have a meeting dedicated to this one topic on X date, right?
Hmm.
So there is a little bit of spontaneity, largely because of my schedule, but I think it works well. And sometimes people say, "Hey, I've got this. What do you think?" And I'm like, "Let's do it right now." So that makes it kind of fun too. But once we get serious, we do have a very documented process, and we have people that are responsible for aspects of that development. And we have fine-tuned the process over the last year, and it's gotten really good, really good. Like, we're working on a couple projects right now, and because of that, I think we're ahead of the game and
Hmm.
ahead of where we should be, because we've done a real good job of tracking ourselves and communicating.
I'm sorry, I'm pausing because I'm taking all of it in. Tracking yourselves and communicating, those two are so collaboration to me is so people say it's a buzzword, but I think it's so important where everybody feels like they can contribute and also that they're valued and valuable. So communicating their ideas, communicating through the process is fantastic. But tracking, that to me, as more of a creative thinker, the notion of tracking things like that makes my head explode, just because it sounds like there are potentially so many details. Can you talk a little bit about what the ideas are behind traffic tracking and what it is that you're actually tracking?
Well, I think you just answered the question. There's so many details, right?
Mhm.
I mean, at the end of the day, we build it forward, but I'm going to reverse engineer it, because I think this is easier to explain. Say you have this great concept, and right now the everything's on cycle, right? So to sell it into a channel or a retail chain, they have their meetings on X date, and then they make changes on Y date, right? And they're pretty. I mean, think about this, because you're dealing with hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of products. You just can't like do it every day and every week. So they have these fixed periods. So you know what those are. So you work backwards and you say, okay, we're going to launch XYZ product at this retailer because this is where we really feel like we have to start. So you know the date that you're going to present. You know the dates that they'll do resets at stores. Then you kind of work backwards and say, okay, what do we have to do to get to that point, right? What are all the steps? And it's starts at concept. The first thing is the liquid. What's the liquid look and taste like, right? And what do you want in that liquid? And back to that whole product brief. What does it represent? And then you kind of go forward into, okay, when do we, final product approval? And then from there, artwork and labeling, package configuration, and then you've got to produce it. So you have to have all your, source all your raw materials, and just about every piece of raw material except for the liquid itself is branded. And then, legal, is it, are we infringing on anybody's intellectual property? If not, is it available? Can we trademark it? And then what sort of campaign are we going to have behind it? And then when do we actually scale up to a full production mode? And when can we have that product in our warehouses? And when can we ship it? So it's, all these various aspects, which involves every department, right? Sales, marketing, operations, finance. So it's a multi-departmental collaboration and meeting where we're tracking and checking the box. Do we have that covered? Do we have that covered? Do we have that covered? And what's the timing? I mean, because depending on the package, if it's a specialized package, we may have to put something in at the plant that produces it because they can't produce that package. So all these questions, and where are you sourcing the ingredients, and what's the lead times, right? So, and you want to kind of time it right where you have product, packaging, artwork that you can share to sell it in and they can taste it. And then to be able to put a final product on their shelves the day that they want it. And that's the process. And if you don't document it, you're going to miss something. So, and we have someone that leads that process, that brings everybody together, that holds them accountable as to where do we stand with this? You're supposed to get back to us on that. Where do we stand on this aspect? Where's that aspect? And, again, it brings, it brings the organization closer together. I mean, we're not a big organization, and you know what? Not just brands make organizations successful. It's people and how they play off and interact with one another, right?
For sure.
So, you can understand, like, today, I remember when I was a little kid and the Beatles were popular, right? Today, you put on a Beatles record and it sounds contemporary, right? Like they haven't lost anything. And, granted, they wrote great music, but together as a unit, what just, 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 was like 20, right? Not
Right.
4.
Right.
And I believe organizations are the same way, where if people click together intellectually, if they click together spiritually, if they click together on so many different levels, you're more powerful, right? And this process really brings out the best in an organization.
I love that you use the Beatles analogy. I mean, I agree. The Beatles solo, Band on the Run is a great album, but nothing can compare that they did solo to Rubber Soul and Revolver. So I
Yeah.
completely take your point. And it's interesting to me how every person in your organization sounds, again, like they're encouraged to contribute, and then also need to contribute, and that you have
Yeah.
someone who is an implementer. someone who's, or maybe an integrator who goes, yes, this is my job to make sure that everybody is on track. And again, that's one of my challenges. I sometimes take on too many projects. Have you ever found that happens with the company?
Yes. Yeah.
How do you
I
handle
mean,
that?
it's difficult. That's something that you have to watch very, very carefully, but it's something that see my I have one prerequisite for people that come to work for us. You want to be there, and it's just not a job, right? You
Hmm.
want to be there to make a difference. And you could be the guy that mops the floors, but you're going to make a difference, right? And I want everyone to feel empowered that they do make a difference. And quite frankly, they do, because if one employee doesn't do their job, the whole company suffers,
Mm.
right?
Hmm.
So there's nowhere to hide. And I don't mean that to add pressure to people, but it kind of it sets the bar high, where I want you to want to be here. I want you to want to make a difference, and I want you to want to contribute. And when you have people thinking at that level,
Hmm.
you get great results. And then, but you're right. But the negative side is, you've got to be careful that people don't take on too much, because when they do, that's when errors occur.
Hmm.
And errors aren't good, because obviously it adversely impacts the company, but it adversely impacts that individual, right? And I also believe, look, I'm a hard worker. I've worked hard my entire life. My family accuses me of being a workaholic.
Mm.
And there's been many Fridays when we're supposed to do something or go someplace, and dad's still at work around a phone, and everybody's angry with him.
Mm.
But I also believe that you need time off to refresh your batteries and to have fun and enjoy your family or whatever you want to do during your time off. So I really encourage that as well. But when you're here, I want 150%.
Mm.
And I want you to want to be here. But you're right, the tough part is, I've had several employees I've had to, it's kind of funny, I've had to admonish and say, I don't want you doing that. I want you doing this. This is where you're the most effective. And I don't want you burn out. Or I had one employee, I told him if I saw an email from him after 11 o'clock at night, I was going to fire him, because he
Wow.
was burning the candle at both ends. And I'm like,
Sure.
I don't want you doing that. So that's something you have to watch. And that, I never thought about it till you brought that up, but that's something that you definitely have to watch, is that people get so caught up in it, they take on too much. And it's not out of desperation, it's because they want to and they care.
Sure, but it doesn't matter, does it? Because they can still burn out. Even if you care about
Yes.
something, you can
Yeah.
still burn out. So
Yes.
so balance in all things, I think,
Yes.
is the way to go. And something that speaking of balance, this is a weird transition, but here goes. One of the things that I noticed as far as the packaging of reads, and this is because I'm an artistic type person and I love colors. From very early on, I remember thinking, wow, the ginger ale is more yellow, the ginger beer is more green, and then there's always an orange accent. This is, yes, I noticed these things, and here it is. So, so I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the design. How, if you know, because you weren't at the company yet, but how did that all happen? What were the colors chosen? I know they're white, yellow, green, and orange, but how does that all translate into how you're innovating now with the way the product is presented?
I think I mean, obviously we like that design because we stay with it. I just think it sort of reflects that whole motif, the Jamaican inspired ginger beer. I think
Mhm.
that's what if I had to put my finger on it, it kind of comes down to that, and it sends off that whole sort of tropical image, which is reflects the style of our ginger beer.
Mhm.
And it's something that, like, if you look at now, we really use the palm trees in our ginger ale and our mocktails. So we've kind of stayed true to that. And it just feels, colors and the whole creative element is, yes, I guess there is a bit of a science to it, but I look at it more of what's appealing to the eye,
Mhm.
and where does your eye go, and what does it catch, and what does it reflect?
Mhm.
And obviously you talk to a designer and they're going to tell you should paint your kitchen this color because it creates appetite and vibrancy. And this room, you want this color because it creates that. And bedrooms, you want this color because you want them to be serene and comfortable. And I think labels are kind of the same way, right? And it just stayed on that whole sort of Jamaican slash tropical theme of who we were, the roots of it's really in the ginger beer, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
and again, we haven't, we've made it more contemporary,
Mm-hmm.
but we haven't deviated from that basic structure.
Yeah, because it works, right? And
Yeah, yeah.
they're instantly recognizable, and that's something that was great for me again when I started drinking reeds in the 90s was that I could always find them. And I I don't know how quite how to say it, but I'm just going to say it. It feels to me like the beverage industry is really crowded. You've got the big giants.
Oh, oh, yes, it is. Yes.
Yeah.
You know, you know, let me come back to that for a second. But two things that I really haven't talked about is we've sort of dominated the conversation with our Reed's portfolio, but we also have another craft soda portfolio called Virgil's, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is, we bought it in 94, so that's 27 years. So it's in the same age group as Reed's. And again, it's the same basic premise, all natural, non-GMO. And we haven't talked about, this aspect where a lot of consumers now and the trends are no sugar, right? Zero
Mm-hmm.
calorie, no sugar. They're keto friendly, certified keto friendly. You mentioned you consume the zero sugar ginger beer, and I talked about the zero sugar ginger ale, but I drink all of our stuff, but we've created this, well, actually, Reed's had it. We brought it back, our Dr. Better, which is a pepper flavored item, but we have a great, root beer among other flavors. And, we have this proprietary sweetening system that's all natural that tastes great and has no aftertaste. So one of the things about zero sugar items, people tend to plug their nose, I think, and taste it because it's zero sugar, but it has a bit of an aftertaste, and ours doesn't. And we
Mm-hmm.
haven't really spent a lot of. And so, in terms of innovation, we're looking for something that has mouthfeel and flavor that emulates a full sugar drink, but has no calories and is all natural.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, again, that's a big part of our innovation because we're seeing a lot of growth in our zero sugar line, both Reed's and Virgil's.
Mm-hmm.
But, we think we have the best tasting zero sugar product, on the market. And that's another thing where we've, I think, done a really good job of innovating. And again, staying true to who we are, all natural, but trying to give the best experience to our consumers as possible. And like I said, I drink these every day, and sometimes I drink it and I'm like, I have to look at the label and say, damn, did we put sugar in this all of a sudden? Because it tastes that good and the mouth feels
Right.
that good. So those are two things, Virgil's and the zero sugar line, which we have across our entire portfolio and we use, which I think gives a far superior taste and a taste that really is the closest thing in the marketplace, in my opinion, that you can get to a full sugar equivalent.
It's so interesting. You're talking about mouthfeel, and one of the things my husband accuses me of being a super taster because I can taste certain things from a mile away, and what I don't like, I definitely don't like, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
And what's interesting to me about drinking reeds, first of all, I'm vegan. And so I know the other ones aren't vegan, but the zero sugar are vegan. There's no honey in them. And that makes me so very happy because now I can drink reeds. And again, and so what's fascinating to me about what you're saying, this notion of, as I said, mouthfeel is that it is about the experience, not just of drinking the drink, but how you feel after you've drunk it. And and maybe because I'm not as familiar with the beverage industry as I could be, I didn't think that that was something that a company would be thinking about. I would think that it would be, and this, correct me if I'm wrong, that it would be more like, oh, you know our products, you like our products, you buy our products, yay. But mouthfeel is a post experience thing. Can you talk a little bit about what it is that you're trying to, what it is, what mouthfeel is, just for clarification, and also what it is that you're trying to achieve with the drinking experience for the person who's opened up a bottle of Reeds.
Well, let me just make a comment about super tasters. They scare me, but I love them at the same time because it's a unique group of people, and I can tell when people comment, I'm like, that must be a super taster because they have the ability to taste things in both positive and imperfections that the vast majority of people don't taste.
Mm.
So it's always good. And we have a couple super tasters in our office, which I love to bring them in to taste stuff because they can pick out imperfections that most people can't. So that's a great skill set. So mouthfeel, the best way to describe it is like, so take a glass of water and take a chocolate milkshake, right? And those are like two extremes and how they're going to feel in your mouth. And a lot of mouthfeel is about what you perceive it to be, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you think about children, and all my kids were really finicky eaters, it wasn't so much about taste, it's how that food felt in their mouth, right?
Mm-hmm.
So mouthfeel is such an important aspect of it. And again, a lot of it's perception, but so in a typical beverage, and let's go back to before zero sugar diet sodas were there. The best way to describe it, let me see if I can get this right. So the flavor is the music, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the sugar is the amplifier, right? It takes it up a notch. It makes it loud. It makes it bold, and it really gives it that mouthfeel. So, if you say you're vegan, I've been on a couple of these podcasts and other things with some other great entrepreneurial people in the food and beverage space, and when they talk about zero sugar for baking, fill and mouthfeel are important because that's what you can't use like stevia to bake with, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just awful. So when you think about sugar, not only gives it that flavor, that amplification of those flavors and makes it pop, it gives it that mouthfeel that you expect, that you feel like you could almost chew it, but bite into it, that it tastes that good and it's that satisfying. It's not just like Kool-Aid. It's just not like flavored water.
Mm-hmm.
That's the big distinction between, our craft sodas and our ginger beers is that mouthfeel.
Mm.
And when you take sugar out, right, and we use cane sugar, so cane sugar to me has better mouthfeel than just regular sugar or high fructose corn syrup, which the vast majority of mainstream beverages use. You take away that, and with the zero sugar, you can get the flavor, but then it tastes like flavored water. So you need that mouthfeel, that sort of bite to it that makes it feel like you're drinking a full sugar, because it's not just the flavor, it's the feel, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we really taste, mouthfeel, not just when zero sugar, not just flavor, but sweetness and mouthfeel. Does it feel light? Does it feel too heavy? Does it feel right? And we spend a lot of time on that in developing our zero sugar because we want it to emulate a full sugar taste.
Mm-hmm.
Most consumers have basically said, okay, I'll compromise on flavor, I'll compromise on mouthfeel because I don't want sugar.
Mm-hmm.
So many consumers today say, I'm going to pick and choose where I get my calories. I'm going to pick and choose if I want sugar, where I'm going to get it from. Many say, I want to eliminate sugar entirely from my diet. So we want to give them that product that they feel like they're having that indulgence, right?
Mm-hmm.
Without the negative things that they're trying to avoid. And why should you have to plug your nose or choke down and just say, okay, it's zero sugar, I'm going to accept it, right? And we want to say to our consumers, or to all consumers, you don't have to compromise. You can have your cake and eat it too, so to speak, right?
Your zero sugar cake, yes.
Yeah, your zero sugar cake. And look, and I drink, and that's what I drink, zero sugar. So I'm, personally motivated because I want to drink the best thing that I can drink and have the best flavor. So we really take that very serious. And that's what, again, stay true who do we are. The best tasting, all natural, bold flavors, real as possible. And when we develop products, that's the goal, right? And mouthfeel is important because, like I said, I've opened a can of something, I've drank it, like our black cherry, and I'm like, oh my God, this tastes so good. And I know what the answer is, but I still look at the back of the can to make sure it doesn't say sugar, right? And that's I want, and I want to feel that way about all of our products. And that's our goal for zero sugar products. Make them feel like they're full sugar, that there's no compromise, and they taste fabulous.
That's awesome. And it's interesting to hear you talk about it with such passion about these products, because otherwise why do it, right? If you're not going to
Right.
be if you're if you're not going to be really in love with the work. And this is something that I love the way you described it. It feels almost like drinking the drink is a tactile experience in addition to being a taste experience, which
Yeah, it is. It really is.
yeah,
And
it's fascinating.
I mean, even like, look at our products are carbonated, having the right carbonation, because that matters. Because people that look, I love carbonated products. I drink sparkling water, right? I drink our sodas. I love carbonation, and I'm very particular about carbonation. Carbonation is almost like sugar. It's like the tone, right? It's the bass and the treble in the music.
Hmm.
If it's right, it makes everything perfect. If it's off, it throws it off. And that's another element of mouthfeel and the attribute of the product that we spend a lot of time in. Like sometimes when we do our samples lab can't get the carbonation level that we want.
Hmm.
So we try to do our best with that. But it just shows you how important that aspect is too, and that we really watch. And that's the thing I do when I open our product. How easy does that twist open? Does it make that pop? When I pour it in, does it, do we get that? Do I see the level of carbonation in foam? Because that's another really important attribute of our products when we develop, to make sure that they're in the range of carbonation that we think makes the most sense to really accentuate the flavor. So it's really, I mean, it is, we are very passionate about it. You're right about it. And it's just not me, it's everybody in the organization when we taste and we drink our stuff. But those are the things that we look at that level and want to make sure that we have it absolutely perfect. So when consumers open that, they feel the same way. And there's nothing more pleasurable when you get an email, receive an email from a consumer about your product and how they love it. But at the same time, there's nothing like a kick to the gut when somebody has a bad experience. And I'll tell you what, and when they have a bad experience and they reach us, we reach back out to them to try to make it better, to try to get their input, maybe clarify something, maybe, sometimes somebody misinterprets what a product really is,
Hmm.
and you have to kind of help them get there. But these are important aspects that we're very customer centric and want and are committed to put in the best quality products, and we take every aspect of those products very serious.
And that makes sense, right? That no company is anything without its clients and customers. You'd be in a
Exactly.
vacuum. So, and that's something that brings me to my next question. Because Norm, I'm going to keep you here for the next 8 hours. I'm fascinated by the fact that people have their favorites, right? They might have their favorite as far as Reed's, they might have their favorite as far as Pepsi or Coke or whatever. And Reed's has this reputation for being a cut above. But how does that affect the average person who wants a drink? Are the people who you're serving as an organization, as a company, are they people who are more discerning in a certain way, or are they people who are healthier or who want to be healthier? How does all of that break down when it comes to what we were just mentioned a little while ago, this pretty crowded beverage industry?
Well, yeah, I think they're definitely discerning, and some are connoisseurs that love our products. We still have growth with all of our full sugar line in today's day and age, which to me I find amazing. I think most people are driven by healthier, all natural. And I think that's really probably the mindset of our consumer.
Mm,
They want natural ingredients, they want healthier products, they don't want preservatives. They don't want artificial colors, artificial flavors. They don't want high fructose corn syrup if they're drinking sugar. So I think those are the things they clearly read labels. I think our consumers are label readers, which
Mm,
I think is great for us because they know what they want and they're not going to compromise. And I think that's the trends are going that way. I think those are the, you know, where people want, and they, and when they want to indulge in something that's good for, that's good, not just something that's crap, that's artificial.
for sure.
So I think people are more educated, obviously, and they know what they want in their diet, but everybody still wants things that taste good, right? I mean, that's one thing that hasn't changed. So if you can deliver something that tastes fabulous, but it's healthier and that's all natural, I mean, that's our consumer. But in terms of flavors, everyone's taste buds are different.
Hmm.
You could taste something, and I could taste it, and we taste two totally different things. So that's what you have to be careful. That's why I call, we can't be the umpire that listens to the crowd, because the umpire on a good day only makes 50% of the people happy, right? So we can't, you're not going to make everybody happy with every flavor.
Sure.
People taste things differently, and that's how they pick their flavors. But you hope that the flavors that they like, that you satisfy. It just, the flavor spectrum and how people taste it is wild. And even when we do our tasting, how people react to what they pick up on. But I mean, you can't criticize people because that's what they perceive and that's what they taste, right? And you can't tell them what they taste. So that's always the big challenge. So it's kind of like stick to what you're trying to produce, whether it's an orange or vanilla cream or a root beer. That's our best, and you hope that people like it, but you can't get frustrated because people may buy. I mean, because we'll have somebody that says, "Hey, I bought this, and this. I love this, but didn't like that." Well, maybe you don't. That's not that flavor doesn't jive well with your taste buds.
Hmm.
So you can't let that discourage you too much because you're never going to have people like everything across the board. As much as we strive to, it's just not going to happen. So, we try to whatever flavor it is. This is what we want to achieve, and we're going to make it the best tasting. So the people that like that will love our stuff. But coming kind of back, I think that's where the trends are going. Obviously, we talked about the non-alcoholic beverage options, which is
Hmm.
growing. We talked about all natural. We talked about zero sugar, and I think people just want healthier, better for you products. And then, you know, in the case where our ginger beers, where we're using ginger, there's some efficacy with ginger, right? And that's, I think, what sets us apart with our ginger ale and our ginger beer is you're getting you're getting real ginger in those products, and real ginger has a lot of great properties that we hear from our consumers all the time why they drink our product and how grateful they are that it exists and that we use real ginger in those products.
Yeah, I mean, I love it when I go on the few occasions I've had to go sailing in my life. I bring reeds. Frankly, I know I sound like a commercial for you all, but I bring it because to stave off being seasick. It's
Yep.
wonderful for that. So yeah, absolutely. I understand, and I love what you just said about perception and how your perception of what you're tasting is so unique to each individual person. I think that's so important. And to me, something that's good for you and tastes bad is medicine. And something that's good
Yes.
for you and tastes good doesn't necessarily have to be that way. It can be something that you're just enjoying. And yet, we're sort of coming out of this pandemic where a lot of people have had all sorts of obviously big issues, and Reed's play has played a role, I'm sure, in many people going, okay, I need my comfort, and this could be my ginger ale or my ginger beer. What has gone on, if you can talk about it a little bit? What are some of the challenges that Reed's faced during the pandemic, and how have you dealt with them, and where are you going next with respect to this new future that we're going to be living in?
That's a great question. I was thinking about this. So I went out and I was at one of our production locations yesterday. So traveling back, you got a lot of time to think. So I'm thinking about that, and I'm like, man, talking about a dichotomy of two worlds. So during the pandemic, we actually benefited because people, I think, went back to brands they could trust, brands that reflect quality, and brands that were healthier. And we had a really good year, right? Now, what I didn't really see coming post pandemic, and I don't think anybody did for that matter, was what's going on with the supply chain and transportation in this country. There's so much pent up demand, right? And then with people losing jobs, like I was in Philadelphia last night at the airport, and the place was jam packed, right? And I'm watching it, and I love seeing stuff happen. And I got a chance to talk to the manager, and he said our business is up 30% over last year. Our staff is down 40%. And I'm thinking, wow, that's got to be really taxing. So the point is, the big challenge this year, which we had some issues that we worked it out. Supply chain has just been very difficult to manage. I mean, for example, you cannot get cans in the United States. Every can manufacturer is at capacity. So people are importing cans from all over the world. Well, guess what happens with that? There's all the ports in this country are congested. So what would normally be a 4-month lead time could be a 7-8 month lead time, because we ordered something from Europe and it sat in the Pacific, sat in the ocean for 2 months before it could even get a dock time. And then once you get a dock time to get through customs and get unloaded. So the supply chain has been probably the most difficult I've seen in my entire career, by far. Transportation, I talked about the port congestion. I think I read something for every truck, there's 12 loads to go on that truck.
Wow.
So, it goes back to what I talked about, supply versus demand. Our transportation costs have gone up, have doubled.
Wow.
And it's like, wow, where did this come from? Now, they're starting to come down, and things are starting to look like they, by the end of the year, could become more normal, or at least in the first part of next year. But so it requires you to plan things out more. Board, which we use for our wraps and cardboard for our containers, have longer lead times. There's been a shortage of steel for caps to put on your bottles. There's been a shortage of carbonation because the primary supplier of carbonation are ethanol plants. And when nobody's driving, no one's using ethanol, right? So the byproduct of that. So carbonation has even gone up. Wood's gone up, wood pallets that you stack your product on. So virtually every aspect of our supply chain has been impacted. And we didn't see this during COVID. We saw some tightening. Labor is the other aspect too. Production facilities are having a hard time hiring people. So it's really touched every facet of our business. So the post-COVID year has been, believe it or not, much more challenging than during the pandemic. Which I thought once we got through the pandemic, the biggest challenge is going to be changing consumer preferences and tastes and how they shop. And that would be enough to challenge us. It's really been, the supply chain has been turned sideways.
Right.
And so when people ask me, what keeps you up at night? That's what keeps me up at night. Cost of transportation and snafus in our supply chain, because as good as our people are, we have to think out longer periods of time to avoid issues. And we've had a few. And it's really unfortunate, because it's like, man, never had to deal with this before, ever. Not even close. Like as you get older, and remember my parents talking about certain parts in life, and remember that, but we got through it, remember that, and we got through it. But now this is the most unique I've ever seen. But you know what? We'll power through it. I mean, it's not like we're defeated and are hanging our heads down and say we can't do it. We just work twice as hard, and we know that it's going to return to some aspect of normalcy, but it's been a bigger challenge than most people think. And if you pick up any financial press, it's in the paper every day. right? And look, it impacts every aspect. I mean, to buy cars, you can't buy a car. Try renting a car. You can't even rent a car today, right? Because there's not available.
Right.
I tried to buy a stereo receiver. I couldn't find the brand and model that I wanted. My wife wanted a new washer and dryer. We got the last one in the store, the model that she wanted. Otherwise, we had to wait like 2 months.
Right.
If you want to buy faucets, most of them are out of stock. I mean, so it's impacted virtually every consumer category there is imaginable, this whole supply chain thing. So it's been a struggle, but like I said, we'll power through it, and we're not complaining, but it's definitely changed how we do business.
Oh, sure. I imagine. I mean, whatever supply surplus there was pre-pandemic got used up during the
Yes.
pandemic. And now all of a sudden, if you didn't have a supply surplus to carry you for 2 years, yeah, you're going to be short. And who did? No one ever thought during pre-pandemic, or even during the beginning months, no one thought it was going to be this long. And so having to stay agile and having to stay sort of light on your feet has become so important for so many companies. And moving, as I said, moving into the future, it's going to be fascinating to see how we all do. If and when something like this ever happens again, how will we plan for it? And that sort of leads me to my next question. And I promise I have like a bunch more questions, but I will I will absolutely stop soon. I was just wondering, what's your vision for Reeds moving into the future? What is your vision for this company?
Well, I think we probably talked about this before we went on air, that the thing that I've seen that I'm really proud of, but it feels good too, is that we're pivoting, that we're kind of, the we're migrating from, the what I'll call the all natural ginger beer company that kind of played in one category, to something that's much more resonates with a much larger group of consumers, that really satisfies their demand
Mm,
but stays true to who we are. And it's been a subtle pivot, but you can see it in the products that are ordered. You can see it on what's selling and what's not selling. You can see it in consumer feedback. So I think, the vision is to continue to produce great tasting all natural beverages, and that are both ginger based, but also our craft sodas that are healthier, that we have, continued to develop great zero calorie, zero sugar products, but, to really look into maybe additional categories, either in the beverage or the food space, but to be sort of that company that really puts out premium, high quality, better for you, all natural products. And, just like we were able to leverage and successfully grow our business, on the whole premise of ginger, there's other ingredients out there that, hey, why can't Reeds do that too? Right. So, the future is, being that company that really represents that product that consumers can trust, that they enjoy drinking, and they know comes from the finest ingredients sourced throughout the world. And but also that, and we've talked about this too, and this is the first time I've touched on this, that, really looking at, as most companies are, that have a conscience in, you know aspect of our day-to-day living, and part of that's going to be sustainability, that we're looking into and digging deeper. But, just being a company that reflects the times that we live in, that, doesn't just die and go away because they stayed true to what they used to be. I mean,
mm,
there's so many great examples of that, so many products and companies when I was growing up that were like the big players that are just barely hanging on today, right? And I don't want to be that company that doesn't recognize what consumers want and what are the current trends, but to be on the forefront of that. And I think we've really done a good job of pivoting to do that, right? And that's where I get that sense of what's going on in our company. That I really like that feeling that we're putting out products that people want and that are happy to have in their hand, and but also enjoy tremendously, right? And that are relevant to today's consumers. And that's what I want to be. I want to continue to be that way, and start from this great idea that really was innovative, right? Truly innovative in terms of ginger beer and using ginger, and to continue on that whole premise. But you can't just stick to something and hope that it lasts forever, but to be able to respond accordingly. And I think we've that's been the real key to, it's reflected in our innovation and who we are. And I think that's what kind of sets us apart too. And it makes it a great place to come to work, because that's what we're doing.
That's fantastic. I love it. I love it. All right. So, speaking of the place that you work, if you don't mind, how do people find out more about Reads? Do you have a website, an Instagram? Could you share that? Because I
Yeah,
would
all
love
of
to
the
have
above.
that.
I mean, www.drinkreads.com, www.drinkvirgils.com. We have a Facebook page. We have an Instagram account. I have them on my computer, so I just hit the button.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, it's all linked. It's all linked on our website. But there's a tremendous amount of stuff there. We have an 800 number for consumers to call. Obviously, you can comment on our social media. There's a consumer info email that people can contact us, and we do reach back. So it's not a one-way street.
Mm.
We do respond, and like I said, there's times that I pick up the phone or email. I mean, let me tell you, we had a family that ordered some product on Amazon, and it was unfortunately there was only available in glass, and the product broke, and they were disappointed. It was from their like 10-year-old son.
Mm.
So I read it, and I'm like, wait a minute, they're like 2 towns away. So I said, reach out to them and tell them that they're gonna have a special guest that's gonna deliver the product. And I showed up and they wouldn't let me leave. The kid was so tickled pink.
I love that.
I showed up with a case of, he loved root beer. I showed up with a case of that. So I look at things like that, and I'm like, wow, I want to do this. So I'll say to our consumer team, let me handle this one. But I think that we're really good about that, right? We take it very serious. So, so you can do through our website, and there's links to everything, Instagram, whatever, you can reach out to us and you're going to get a response. But the websites to me are always the best, because they have the most information.
Mm-hmm.
And they're linked, so you can go from one to the other. But it talks about all our products. It talks about our history. It talks about how things are made, what's important to us. So there's a lot out there. Or just Google us. I mean, we're going to pop up, and there's a lot of information out there.
Yeah, there really is. And I'll just say it this way, and they're just tasty and good. I know I sound like I'm a commercial for you all, but I'm not an affiliate. I've been drinking Reeds for a long time, and I love,
Yeah,
love, love
well,
it.
we love it. That's what we love to hear. We love to
Yeah.
hear that.
That's awesome. Well, Norm, I'm so grateful that you took the time to join me on the show. I have just one last question that I ask everybody who comes on the show. And it's a strange little question, but I find that it yields some fascinating answers. And the question is this: if you had an airplane that could skywrite anything for the whole world to see, what would you say?
What would I say? Boy, I got to find a way to say that. Well, first of all, I guess I would go back to our whole campaign here is that, Reads is real, right? And I can't emphasize enough that, you know, there is a difference between us and other products. There
Mm.
really is. What the ingredients we use and how we make it. And I love that, real is always better. I think I would write that. Real is always better. But I guess I'd have to say Reads slash people know. But I mean, that's to me, it's like, look, one of my hobbies is cooking. When you use real fresh ingredients, you can taste the difference. And it doesn't
Sure.
have to be complex. It could be the simplest thing, right? To go out in your garden and grab some fresh herbs. And how I cook is how I think Reads is. It's like real is always better. and we use real ingredients. We use the finest, and how we make everything. So I would go with our current campaign, which is really reflects who we've been from day one,
Mm-hmm.
and who will continue to be. Is that real is always better, and that's what I would write. And obviously, I'd have to write Reeds and Virgils, so because they
It's a very big part of the sky. The plane has
yeah,
lots of.
I have the Reeds and Virgils logo come after that, but I mean that's who really we are, and it's pretty simple because we were sitting around talking about it, and it's like, you know, that's it's funny. Well, I won't get into it. It was a movie I saw online that I
Oh,
loved.
no. I'm a big movie file, so go
All
for
right,
it.
so Almost Famous, which is now 20 years old, I
Oh,
think,
great movie.
which is one of my favorite movies,
Hmm.
and they get caught in Russell and who's the guitarist for the band Stillwater, and the enemy, the reporter there, who was portraying Cameron Crowe, and the band has a fight over the T-shirt. They go walking out. The kid still needs the interview. This Volkswagen minibus pops up and says, "Hey man, aren't you Russell from Stillwater?" And he says, "Yeah, on my better days." He goes, "Well, my buddy's having a party. We're real Topeka people." And they give him something and he's drinking the whole night. He's going, "This is real." He's flashing the lights on. "This is real. You're real." And I just that sticks in my mind about being real. And
Right.
I'm like, so when we were talking about that, I just felt like we're real. That's who we are. We're real ginger, not fake, and all the other stuff. So I think that's what I would say. Real is always better, and probably and we're real. Virgil's reads, and that's it's that simple, but it's that powerful at the same time. And I think, and obviously, being a super taster, you could pick that up. That it does make a difference.
Sure. Sure. No, it does. It does. Absolutely it does. And that's one of the reasons that my husband buys me. He goes, I get cravings and he goes out and he buys me
He's a good
sweets.
man. He's a good man.
He's a keeper, right? Once again, Norm, thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate it. And I'm really grateful. And I will toast you the next time I have a bottle
Good.
of
Well, look
zero
at
sugar beads.
this. This has been a lot of fun. It's my pleasure. I mean, I could talk, you said 8 hours. I could be here for 8 hours. This is my favorite topic to talk about. I mean, obviously I love what I do. I love the products. So not only am I the CEO, I'm probably the number one fan and a big consumer, but it's a fun job. And I was passed the mantle. I didn't create it. I tip my hat to the guy that did and the folks that brought it this far, but it's an honor and privilege to be at the helm, and I have fun every day.
That's amazing. And I love that you said that. Loving what you do, getting to that point where you really, really are a big fan of what you do it's aspirational. It's something that we can all aspire to just get to play and have fun while at the same time creating something that is so beneficial to so many. Norm, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. This
Thank you.
is Oh, my pleasure. This is Isolde Trachtenberg for the Innovative Mindset podcast. I'm super grateful you were here. If you're liking what you're hearing, first of all, you need to go get yourself a bottle of Reeds. Buy 4. They come in 4 packs, and drink a bottle of Reeds. Toast Norm Snyder and his team at Reeds and at Virgil's. And if you're liking what you hear, again, leave a review of the show. I would love to hear from you. Any comments or ideas that you have, I'm all ears. Until next time, again, this is Isolde Trachtenberg reminding you to listen, learn, laugh, and love a whole lot. Thanks so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you being here. Please subscribe to the podcast if you're new. And if you like what you're hearing, please review it and rate it and let other people know. And if you'd like to be a sponsor of the show, I'd love to meet you on patreon.com/innovative mindset. I also have lots of exclusive goodies to share just with the show's supporters there. Today's episode was produced by Isolde Trachtenberg and is copyright 2021. As always, please remember this is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Past performance does not guarantee future results, although we can always hope. Until next time, keep living in your innovative mindset.